keynote speaker.
All right, thank you very much, Amy. Well, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Ashleigh Hillier, as I have a considerable personal interest in her work. Dr. Hillier is a professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Massachusetts Lowell in the United States. She completed her postdoctoral training in the Department of Neurology at Ohio State University and her graduate work at the University of Lincoln in England. She is the director of the Center for Autism Research and Education, or CARE, at UMass Lowell, and is the coordinator of the Interdisciplinary Minor in Disability Studies. Her research interests focus on transition and adult outcomes for those on the autism spectrum, including employment, college success, healthcare, financial literacy, and gender identity. She also implements various program interventions for autistic adolescents and young adults, including a college preparation mentoring program, a mentoring program for UMass Lowell students, and a social networking group. So if you could please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Hillier.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Sean, for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to share my screen. So please let me know if there are any problems in seeing my screen or any problems in seeing me or hearing me. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Sorry, Ashley, you don't see the screen yet.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me try that again. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yeah, there it comes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So I want to start by thanking the conference organizers for being just so thoughtful and mindful about the program that you've put together. I think it's been a wonderful conference so far, and I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to the other presenters, the panels, the various discussions. And again, I really want to congratulate your efforts. And I'm really thrilled to be a part of it. I'm actually honored to be invited to come and speak to you all today about my programming and some of the work that I'm doing here at UMass Lowell. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here to listen to me today. I'm going to talk about some of our collaborative work with a community-based organization here in Massachusetts, the Autism Asperger's Network. And I'll review some of the work that they do and how we evaluate that program. And then I'll move on and talk about some of our own programming here at UMass Lowell through the Center for Autism Research and Education, including or specifically focusing on our mentoring programs for autistic high school students and college students. I'll be using both identity and person-first language during my presentation as suggested by the conference organizers in recognition of the preferences of various stakeholders. I've also tried to balance my presentation to focus on both the research aspects of the work we're doing, the data that we're collecting, how we're evaluating this programming, and also practical applications and information that others would be able to implement in your own work, or for those who are just interested in how we actually implement these programs, or possibly even thinking about replicating or collaborating with us to replicate these programs. So I'm very excited about any possible opportunities that might come out of this at the end of my talk today. So with the LifeMap program, I'll talk more about how sessions are structured with clients, how goals are formulated, how we categorize progress towards goals, and also some direct experiences that the coaches themselves have shared. And then our other program, and as I mentioned, the college preparation program for autistic high school students, which we call Horizons. A new program called New Horizons, which is actually a group model of mentoring and is within a school setting. Our Horizons Plus program for autistic college students, and a group model, more of a support program. So really at the heart of what we do And at the core of our work is listening to the voices of autistic individuals themselves, which has, of course, been such an important message and theme throughout this whole conference, and also fostering that collaboration and partnership. So through all of our programming, we collaborate and have discussions with individuals who identify as autistic in the planning stages, the implementation and evaluation stages. We do this in a variety of ways, both through open communication with people who have participated in our programming and seeking that feedback through focus groups, through individual interviews, anecdotal conversations, as well as conversations with family members and parents, a lot of which has actually sparked these programs. So a lot of those conversations we've had over the years are what has led us to where we're at now in what we're doing here at UMass Lowell. We also have, through the Center for Autism Research and Education, or CARE, we have an affiliates group which is made up of autistic adults, family members, professionals in the field, and we meet with that group on a regular basis to talk about the research projects that we're doing in CARE and the direct service provision that we're doing. So we're constantly seeking that feedback, input, and expertise from the autism community. A lot of the programs, especially things I'll be talking about today, are very individualized and have a one-on-one model as their core. This really allows us to focus on the strengths and skills already in place by each of the people that are taking part and incorporate the goals of that individual from their perspective. We also hope that our programming, we're really always thinking about a universal design lens and aim that the work we're doing is really applicable to anybody, actually. So, for example, the work we're doing on transition from high school to college, and that mentoring program or mentoring programming, we really believe is applicable to any high schooler who is getting ready to transition from high school to college or employment. So just to touch briefly on previous literature in the area, and I know other presenters have talked about some of these topics as well, so I'll keep this brief. But thankfully, there has been more focus on adult outcomes among people with autism, and more of a shift away from only focusing on younger children, and a greater recognition for gaps in service provision once people graduate from high school. We do see some more negative outcomes around quality of life, barriers to independent living, challenges in securing and retaining rewarding and meaningful employment. At the same time, there's a huge body of literature supporting the efficacy of mentoring. And the business world, for example, incorporates a lot of mentoring models, industrial organizational psychology, for example, as well as specific populations, including at-risk youth, college students, students with disabilities, and even neurodiverse students themselves. So to get specifically to the details of the LifeMap program, as I mentioned, it's really a community-based life skills coaching program. So it's fairly unique in the work that it's doing. It's been providing life skills coaching since 2008 and has served a large number of clients. And all along, they've been collecting a huge amount of data, a tiny part of which I'll talk about today. The real core of the LifeMap program is focused on goals, identifying goals that are achievable, feasible, measurable, and forming a step-by-step plan so that each client, as they refer to their participants, has a step-by-step strategy for achieving their goals. We also try to promote long-term skill development. So once they're no longer in the LifeMap program, they have those foundations that they can apply to future goals as they think about new goals that they would like to attain and how to go about doing that. The goals for people in LifeMap are, of course, very varied. It's a totally individualized program with people coming to the program with their own goals and their own way of defining their goals. Although I'll talk a little bit more about that process. So, the majority of the clients are focused on employment-related goals, but there's a lot of other goals as well, and a lot of interrelated goals. So clients have goals around increasing independent living skills. Some clients are focused on education-related goals and being successful in college or going back to college. Some are focused more on financial literacy and understanding. Some focused more on fostering social opportunities. So it's really as varied as each individual client. The program has around 70 life skills coaches that are working in the program, around 3 full-time employees, 7 or so part-time employees. Their budget is around $1 million US. Some of the clients are paying out of pocket. Others are referred by a state agency. And here in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, Department of Developmental Services, Department of Mental Health, for example. The coaches are coming from a wide variety of backgrounds as well. Some of them have a family member on the autism spectrum. Some of them were teachers. Some of them identify as neurodiverse. Some of them were in academia. Some of them were speech and language or are speech and language therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists. So a broad range of skills that they're bringing to their role as a coach. Some of them, or actually all of them, have a bachelor's degree, and most of them have a master's degree as well. And they're matched with clients based on where they are in terms of location and scheduling. And then also if there's specific goals the client has already identified when they come into the program, which usually there is, they might be paired with a coach who has a lot of experience in fostering and developing those goals. The coaches receive a lot of training initially when they are recruited, and then ongoing. So they meet with their supervisor initially every week, then every other week, then once a month, then every other month. They also meet together as a group. So there's a lot of coaches, so they meet once a month for clinical hour, and supervisors will come onto those meetings as well. And they'll talk about obstacles their clients might be facing and how to foster progress towards goals for their clients. And the Asperger Autism Network, where LifeMap is housed, also offer a lot of different professional development opportunities in terms of trainings and workshops and conferences that they themselves host. A broad structure of thinking about how these coaching sessions are, how they're structured, are that they tend to meet with their clients on a weekly basis, usually around about an hour. They're focused on goals and how to best attain them. They might meet in the client's home, but usually they meet in a community location. Another core aim of the LifeMap program is fostering confidence around achieving goals, reducing anxiety around achieving goals. I mentioned already the developing the long-term skills that are necessary for attaining future goals. And as I mentioned, it looks very different for each dyad. It really depends on the strengths that the client is already bringing to the relationship and what goals they're specifically looking to focus on. In terms of how they formulate their goals, the coaches really guide the client in helping them to identify goals that are, usually the client will come in with quite a broad goal. For example, I want to get a job. So the coach will work with them on breaking that down and thinking about how to really define different sub-goals that will be necessary before they reach that ultimate goal, and making sure that these different sub-goals are quite concrete and measurable and also feasible. Once these goals or sub-goals are really identified and articulated, they work with the client to identify the individual steps that will be necessary to reach each of those goals, as well as thinking about goals, as I mentioned, in a more holistic way, how different goals will impact other goals. So an employment goal, for example, will lead to more financial literacy for that individual, perhaps, or increased independence and social communication skills, for example. And then coaches also monitor progress towards those goals in each of their meetings and assist clients with new strategies or different problem-solving techniques or different priorities as things are constantly changing, and in relation to the progress that is being made or obstacles, how to address each of those in an innovative way that's going to help that client move forward. So I talked about categorizing progress towards goals. This also helps us in how we evaluate the program and making sure that clients are moving towards achieving their goals in an independent way. So they'll start with what we describe as an awareness stage, where they're able to describe their goal, they understand the implications of achieving that goal. Then they work with their coach to develop strategies and a plan to achieve the goal. Then they start to, with the help of their coach, they start to apply those strategies and work towards reaching that goal. And then they are able to apply the strategies independently. And the coach takes on more of a advisory type of role and someone to help hold that client accountable for making progress towards their goal. I've touched on this briefly, but to have just one slide kind of summarizing some of our evaluation techniques, the client and coaches work together to complete a weekly online survey, which tells us what goals they're working on and that stage of progress that they're at with their goal and how long they've been working on that particular goal. I think that's important data for the LifeMap program to be able to track not only the priorities of autistic adults and each individual client in terms of what they want to work on, but how quickly they're making progress towards that and towards the different steps in achieving that goal. Every 3 months, we also ask them to complete a brief measure that looks at their feelings of anxiety towards that goal and feelings of confidence. As I mentioned, that's a core aim of the LifeMap program. We also have a measure of skill development that's tied to the goals that they're working on. And we also implemented an open-ended questionnaire that coaches complete that really gives us a finer grained detail on the strategies that they're using and how they're going about their coaching, as well as their own experiences in their role as a coach. So I realize this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I hope to orient you to this slide and the next one, which is a continuation of this slide, relatively easily. So this is a snapshot of some of the data from around 264 clients in the LifeMap program. We can see how they describe their goals. Now, sometimes they still are fairly broad, and that's a process that they'll work on with their coach to make those goals more specific and narrower and more easily measurable. But we can see some examples here, and then how with that weekly survey data, we code those goals into different sort of umbrella categories. So for example, if the client expresses that their goal is, I will join clubs and participate in 2 social events each week, we will categorize that as a social goal. And if their goal is more, I will submit 2 resumes per week and practice interview skills, we'll code that to an employment-related goal. And then this table also gives us sort of a feel for the percentage of goals that are in each of these categories, which gives us sort of an idea of the priorities of the clients that are in the LifeMap program. And as you'll see, employment is a really important goal for clients in the program. They're all post-high school. And roughly how long on average they continue to work on each individual goal before formulating a new goal. Also independent living and self-care as another goal. Life skills goals, such as working towards a driver's license, for example. An education-related goal, like complete and submit an application for enrollment at the local community college. Regulation, staying calm under fire at work, for example. Communication. In 8 weeks, I would like to be able to make phone calls more promptly with less anxiety. self-awareness, personal growth goals. So those are very broad, and that process of categorizing goals isn't as clear as I hope I've made it look on this slide. You may notice some goals that really could go into multiple categories, but it still is able to give us an idea of where the priorities are of the clients in the Life Map program, where the coaches are focusing most of their energy, and how long it's actually taken to move through stages of progress until the goal is achieved. And also an idea of how they phrase and articulate those goals. With the coaches questionnaire, as I mentioned, we wanted to get really detailed. We have some just amazing coaches who help their clients to achieve really huge goals and really make excellent progress and have a very good experience in the program with their coach. We really wanted to have a better understanding. How are these coaches implementing? What strategies are they implementing, and how are they doing that? And what do they see as reasons for success of their clients? And also some of their own experiences and some of the challenges they face in their role as a coach. So in terms of some specific approaches around how they structure their coaching sessions, this was an open-ended questionnaire with a variety of different questions, and we coded their questions to these different categories. So a lot of coaches talk about the importance of the socializing chit-chat piece that they'll incorporate into the structure of each session. They also discuss the steps and review progress towards current goals. They review from the previous meeting, they do a recap at the end of the meeting, they set the next appointment, they might set new goals or reevaluate the current goals that that client is working on, and talk about challenges and obstacles that the client has experienced that week in making progress towards their goals, and talk about what the next steps might be. Sometimes they work on goals in the session, but not typically. So sometimes they might jump on a company's website and look to quickly see if there are any new openings or something like that. But usually most of that work is done outside of the coaching sessions. So when we ask them what strategies do they think have worked best, we talk about things like encouragement and being very positive, highlighting progress for the client. Often these are goals the client has been working towards for years in some cases, and have seen a lot of setbacks along the way. So highlighting the progress that the client has made, even if it's just a small step towards achieving their ultimate goal, they really make a point to celebrate that. So a lot of work on that relationship and building trust with the client, which is so important, being really listening to the client and being very honest with them, and developing specific strategies to reach those goals, making sure the goals are appropriate, because sometimes the goals are very ambitious and maybe even defined more from people outside, who not necessarily the specific individual, but other goals that other people have for that individual. So making sure that the goal is really their aim and in their own words, and is an appropriate goal for them and where they want to be. Focusing on the skills and strengths in developing those goals. And focusing on mental health, especially around reducing and coping with anxiety, making sure they're very flexible in the goal development and following the lead of the client in doing that. Sometimes role playing is helpful, breaking things down into more manageable tasks. And other things like providing visuals, being consistent in strategies and structuring of the sessions, things like that, encouraging autonomy and ownership on the part of each client. When we ask them things they've tried that don't seem to have been successful, it's kind of the opposite mirror image of the strategies they talked about as being successful. So things like not really seeing things from their client's perspective, or not listening well to their client. Sometimes just overwhelming the client with too much information, having them work on too many tasks at the same time, or just pushing them too hard. trying to just ignore anxiety around goals or working on things before the client is really ready to. That's obviously an ineffective strategy. Lack of consistency in their coaching. And also things like the client not taking notes or not making a list of action items. So when we ask them what really promotes success, when they've seen greater success in reaching goals, what have been the reasons for that? The coaches talk about the motivation for the client, how invested they are and how determined they are to reach those goals, being ready, being prepared for coaching, being able to really focus on their goals, understanding their goals, focusing on their strengths to achieve them. Again, that positive relationship between the client and the coach where they have good communication, the client trusts them, a supportive family, and maybe a network of other supports outside of coaching, such as other agencies who may be providing services, counselors and others working with that individual. Mental or physical health challenges that the client is able to manage, empowerment and confidence. And the client is able to be flexible and adaptable as they work towards their goals. Some of the challenges they report experiencing themselves as a coach is really the anxiety comes up a lot. And again, that's one of the core foci of the Life Map program, is attempting to reduce that anxiety, but anxiety really being a barrier to achieving goals. Other people being too involved, perhaps parents, for example, or expectations that are too high for that client or too low. The people expecting the coach to be an expert on every aspect of the client's life. So there might be a lot of challenges that client is experiencing, and there's a lot of demands on the coach to know something about everything. Sometimes there's just not good communication between people on the client's team. The coaches also talk about logistics and sort of the practical side of coaching, needing to drive around. Some of them have multiple clients, not usually more than 3, but they may be driving around meeting with different clients. There's a lot of paperwork that they need to do. Sometimes they might get discouraged if progress is slow or the client isn't able to follow through at that time. They also sometimes struggle with avoiding the urge to provide solutions themselves instead of empowering the client to recognize solutions. Just not having enough time to put together the information and resources that would really help their client, or not all of the resources that would be beneficial for their client. The communication barriers, just really needing to develop an atmosphere where the client feels accepted, where they feel that they're being listened to, where they feel they can be open with their coach. Maybe if they're not quite ready, or they just need to be more independent to work on goals. Sometimes they might not be motivated, especially if the goal is really being imposed on them from others. And then just sort of things that are more outside of the coach's control, like just making the world a friendlier place, navigating challenges in the workplace. So in terms of some of these outcomes overall, and the model itself, so we do see that as we look at clients over time, because many of them, they stay with their coach, sometimes they meet their main priority goal, and especially if they're paying out of pocket, they'll leave the program. If they are referred by a state agency and the fees for the program are covered by that agency, they'll often stay for years in that relationship with their coach. Will help them to develop a whole range of different goals as they move on in achieving certain goals and formulating new goals. And as we track clients in the program over time, we can see that progress towards their goals, and especially through those 4 stages of progress towards goals. We also see that they reduce anxiety and increase confidence around their goals. And they report that they find the program model to be acceptable. They report the effectiveness of meeting and working with their coach, and it's socially valid for them. We feel that there are a lot of different applications of the Life Map coaching program. I mentioned just having a better understanding of the goals of autistic adults in their own words. Especially around transition planning and service provision for people who have graduated from high school. Also, just the strategies that we've learned that are effective in coaching, as a couple of examples. Oh, sorry, I went one slide too fast. So that sort of wraps up what I was going to say about the LifeMap coaching program. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of our work promoting college success among autistic students and some of our service provision through the Center for Autism Research and Education. So this is a very interdisciplinary center here at UMass Lowell. We have faculty from a variety of different departments, including obviously psychology, sociology, English, engineering, education, work environment, and other departments. And we provide a number of different programs, but I'm focusing on our mentoring programs, and specifically the Horizons program for autistic high school students getting ready to transition to college. The New Horizons, which is a new program. It's a group model and housed within a school. The Horizons Plus program, as I mentioned, for autistic college students, so usually in their first semester, and a group for neurodiverse college students we call Connections. So again, the previous literature, there's increasing work in this area and greater recognition of the strengths that autistic students bring to higher education. For example, their expertise and huge knowledge base in different areas, especially their major or the courses they intend to take in their major, strength and resilience, and determination to succeed, the opportunity to sort of start afresh as they leave high school and go into a new environment and leave sometimes some negative history behind them, and the opportunity to find like-minded peers, hopefully. And some of the previous research talks about some barriers to success in higher education, including experiences of anxiety, depression, social isolation, communicating with professors, faculty, and staff. If they're living on campus, sometimes just campus living. I put dorm life as an example. There's a lot of challenges around navigating the campus, issues around eating and the dining facilities, continuing supports from continuing mental health supports now that they're on campus, executive functioning skills. And some of our own work has focused on access and supports on campus, some of our own research work, self-advocacy and accessing supports on campus, attitudes of other students, as well as staff and faculty towards autistic college students. And also a study we did interviewing parents about concerns they had and expectations and strengths that their child would bring to the college environment. Some of the challenges they talked about were things like social skills, executive functioning, academics, campus living, and the quality of support services and their child's ability to access those support services. There's a lot of previous literature in this area, as others have talked about. So our Horizons College Preparation model, the main core goal is to improve high school students' understanding and preparedness for college, also their motivation to attend college and their confidence around attending college. We make an effort to normalize their experiences and help them recognize that feelings of apprehension or anxiety concerns around leaving high school are experienced by most high school seniors. The model is a 7-week model where we have a fairly structured curriculum, but also with a lot of flexibility built in. They meet with a university student who serves as their peer mentor, usually once a week. They might meet online, they might meet in person, they might meet a combination of online or in person. So I mentioned we have a fairly structured curriculum. There is a topic for each week, but it's a very broad topic. And within that, the mentee works with their mentor to narrow down specific topics that they feel will be most beneficial for them to talk about. So they might focus more specifically on time management skills, or what is their day actually going to look like when they go to college, or how are they going to choose their major. So the topic might be academics, but they'll focus on more specific aspects of that, taking notes in class, for example, or studying for exams, communicating with their professor. So people in the Horizons program are not necessarily planning to come to UMass Lowell. And although we still mostly recruit from Massachusetts or New England, we did actually have a mentee joining us from Puerto Rico the last time this spring when we implemented the Horizons program, which is very exciting. And we also are currently having conversations with the university in Ireland about replicating the Horizons model. And as I mentioned earlier, I hope my presentation might spark some interest in talking more about what we're doing in Horizons and possibly replicating the program in other locations, which would be very exciting. And now that we're all more used to the online virtual environment, this becomes much more feasible. We do some pre-post questionnaires that look at understanding and preparedness, motivation. We also interview each of our mentees and really seek their feedback on what worked for you, what didn't work for you, how should we change this program, what is your advice for us in how we're doing this? And interviewing parents as well. What benefits did they see that came out of the program for their child, and what suggestions do they have for us in terms of the program model? Some of our findings, we actually don't see a lot of movement in feeling worried about going to college. But again, I think this is very typical for high school students getting ready to leave the high school environment. We do see a better understanding of what to expect, and they are more motivated typically to attend college after they participate in the program and have a better understanding of how things work and how to access supports and what those supports might look like, what lectures might be like. In the qualitative analysis of those interviews with parents, they feel that their child is more confident and comfortable about going to college. They know more about college. That connection with their mentor is widely recognized among the parents as being very important and really core to the model. So our participants in Horizons, they don't want to meet with me, much as I would love to chat with them more. They really want to meet with an actual college student who's living it. They're seen as a much more credible source of information. Sometimes high school students, to them, it seems like so long ago, if their parents went to college, that they actually went, that their parents couldn't possibly know anything about going to college. So it's really resonates with them when they meet with a real college student who is living it at the moment. So that's very important. And the parents also talk about their child being more independent, but they also say that they would like the program to be longer and for us to cover more topics. I'll move on, and I could say more about that, but I think at this point, also in the interest of time, I'll move on and talk just briefly about a new pilot program we've just implemented called New Horizons. This is a group model. It's housed within the school. It's a pilot program, so we have a small group right now, and they're only meeting online. They're meeting twice a week. And these are students who are not necessarily going to college. Some of them, their goal is to get a job once they graduate from high school. So it's a more mix of topics that the mentors are reviewing with their mentee. And it's sort of a hybrid. So they meet as a group at the beginning, and then they go into breakout rooms, which is really another nice feature of the online environment, where we can also break out into different groups and efficiently discuss different topics that are more specifically aimed at their own goals and future plans. So far, that program is going well. And then the Horizons Plus mentoring program model. So this is our program for current autistic college students, and they usually meet with their mentor for their first semester. Again, their mentor is a current college student. As with the other programs, we have developed a Google Classroom, and it has a huge, we call it a bucket actually, I should think of a better term, but a huge array of materials in that Google Classroom. The Horizons Plus program is also different from Horizons in that it does not have a structured curriculum. It's very much based on what that mentee comes in with that week during their meeting. And that looks very different. Like with the LifeMap program, it looks very different for each individual mentee. So the mentor does have these resources to draw upon in the Google Classroom with a whole range of different topics that they could cover with their mentee, depending on what their questions are that week or obstacles that they've come up against that week in college. So we've been doing this program for about 10 years as a collaboration with our Disability Services Office, and we've served around 200 mentees and around 100 mentors have participated. We do both some quantitative data collection and qualitative analysis. We do some pre-post questionnaires, especially around adaptation to college. We hope that the Horizons Plus program has an impact on that. We do focus groups and individual interviews, especially around how has your mentor impacted your success as a student. We follow up with them a year later. We've also looked at some academic outcomes around, are they still at college at the end of their first year? How many credits did they earn and what is their GPA? We compare those academic outcomes to a matched comparison group. We also look at the impact on mentors through different surveys and focus groups. So the results from the mentees, we actually don't see a lot of movement in academic outcomes. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is because we're not really focused on improving their understanding of their courses. And I think if it was more, had a more tutoring role, we might see more of a shift in GPA outcome. Also, it is only a single semester, so those broader academic outcomes are more difficult to see a change in a single semester. If the program was longer term, I think that we would. Also, the mentees that we recruit for the program are mentee or students that the Disability Services Office identify as those who might need additional support. So they're already coming into the program at a place where they may have more challenges with regards to academic outcomes. We do see increased adaptation to college. We can't say that's only because of the mentoring program, but the qualitative analysis from the focus groups and interviews really provide a rich source of data for understanding the impact of the Horizons Plus program. And some important themes has come out of that analysis, including the mentor fostering social opportunities has been important, helping them understand how things work and orienting them to the resources available on campus. That supportive relationship, as the parents mentioned in the Horizons program, that supportive relationship with their mentor is very important. And they talk about how they find this program acceptable. They like the one-on-one aspect of the program. And of course, that's really important for making sure that the program is valuable, that it's worthwhile, and it's sustainable. And when we follow up with them a year later, they say that they continue to experience benefits from having participated in the program. So that's very positive. The mentors, we do a standardized measure with them, which also shows they endorse a lot of benefits of being a mentor. And in the focus group analyses that we do with our mentors, they talk about the skills that they've developed, personal growth, a deeper understanding of disability, how it's helped them really develop their own future plans and career goals. And they also talk about the importance of the training that they receive. We actually do meet with the mentors every week in the Horizons, New Horizons and Horizons Plus programs, so that we are aware of what's happening in those meetings. They also actually complete online measures. I didn't put that into this presentation, but they tell us each week, both the mentors and mentees, what happened that week, what did you talk about, what do you want to talk about next week, what isn't working well, what is working well. So we have that constant communication with the mentees and the mentors, both in person and through these online surveys. I think that's really important, not only for providing them with guidance and support, but also to work together as a group to really help one another in the barriers that their mentees might be experiencing as they navigate their first semester at college. I wanted to also talk a little bit about some of the transferable skills that the mentors talk about with us. Just a sense of reward, because sometimes their mentee will start the semester in a place of great anxiety and apprehension and end the semester having been successful and reached their academic goals. They talk about how they have, and they like that they have a lot of responsibility and autonomy in their work with their mentee, especially around working with them to figure out what they should cover and what they could skip. Figuring out the needs of their mentee, what different approaches work well for their mentee, building that rapport and trust. The mentors feel like they improve their own communication skills. They learn to really listen to their mentee, which is a really important skill. They learn to think on their feet, figure out what to do next in the moment, and how to respond to comments their mentee has made. Strategizing and problem solving with their mentee, helping them feel more confident. And as I mentioned, working as a team with their fellow mentors. I might actually skip talking about the connections group actually and go on to my next slide just to present sort of overall conclusions. So I think really I'm hoping that the main takeaways that you'll be leaving with are the ideas that these individualized programming strategies that incorporate the values, opinions, and goals of autistic individuals themselves are really critical, and that peer mentoring with trained peers is successful in helping autistic youth and adults reach their own goals. I just want to acknowledge all of my collaborators, the students that have worked with me, and to thank the autistic adolescents and adults and their family members for their time in working with us and collaborating with us on these studies and programs, as well as our funders. And then I'd like to see what questions I can answer about the material I presented today. So thank you. I will stop sharing so I can see you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashleigh. We are opening it up to questions. So we'll start with the ones here in person. And I see that Carly has a question. So someone's just going to bring you a microphone. And then we'll look to online for any questions that might be coming in as well. It might be turned on already.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. Nancy. Hi. Thank you so much for your talk. I really appreciate it. I just had a few questions and would love to connect with you sort of outside or offline. We've been running a similar program in Ontario called the Asperger Mentorship Program for a number of years, for about 15 years, and now we're implementing something similar to the Horizon program here at the University of Calgary. One of the biggest challenges that we've had is whether, or the importance, I guess, of having mentors who identify as being neurodiverse instead of having peers who are neurotypical or non-autistic. I'm wondering how you've managed to sort of navigate that, if you have, or if you've tried to pilot something similar, or just your thoughts on that would be great.
Yeah, I totally agree with how critical that is. And we have been much more mindful about that as well, especially in recent years. I don't have any specific strategies. However, when I am recruiting mentors, I didn't get into a lot of this, but a lot of them are actually psychology majors, but also from other majors as well, from across the campus. And the strategies I use are really visiting classes and whether it be joining their class remotely or visiting classes in person. And I really emphasize in those discussions that we are looking for neurodiverse students and that would be really important and valuable to the program. So, but we don't have any really good strategies around being able to recruit students or mentors who identify as neurodiverse. I think one of the strategies we're planning right now actually is to reach out to our previous mentees who are still here, who haven't graduated yet, and offer them the opportunity, or hopefully recruit them, encourage them to participate as a mentor themselves. So that's what we're about to initiate like over the summer, we're putting that together and reaching out to our previous mentees.
Wonderful. Sorry, I'll just one follow up to that. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I think there is an importance of having both peers, mentors who are from psychology backgrounds. So one of the things that we found in our mentorship program was the degree or the amount of mental health support that's needed in terms of navigating the appropriate supports on campus, making sure that students are feeling supported. In our program, we see students right from undergrad all the way up into graduate school for an undetermined amount of time, but very individualized approach like yours. And so thank you for this fantastic work, and I'd love to connect outside of this. Thanks.
I would love to connect with you too. Thank you very much.
Great. I'm just going to look to Dean for a moment if there's a question online, and if not, we'll move to Kim. No, okay, great. Kim, you can go ahead with your question.
I don't know. Oh yeah, there we go. Ashleigh, your presentation, first of all, was fantastic, especially tackling the topic of post-secondary education. I went through that myself. Came out of it with a double major, so put a little extra work into that. I really wish that the university I went to had a lot of the support type things that you had mentioned, especially the mentoring. I would say, especially for neurodiverse people and those on the spectrum, in mentorship, especially through post-secondary education, is really critical. I wonder, Ashleigh, would something like that though also be beneficial maybe in high school, like in a high school setting as well, where they can also work on things like dealing with issues like bullying and how to deal with maybe instructors or teachers that are not quite as accommodating? Would some of this maybe apply there as well?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And yes, I certainly think it would. And that's really one of the goals of our what we call New Horizons program, where we're within a high school. So I think there's a lot of different issues. You know, we've mostly focused on transition into college so far. But in this New Horizons program, those students have different goals. They're not all planning to go to college. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to broaden that work and to think more about helping high school students to transition maybe to employment, or also, as you mentioned, deal with challenges they're experiencing within the high school environment. And one of the reasons we actually went to, because I was initially doing social skills groups, but a lot of the feedback that we were getting from participants were that they were signed up by their parents for these social skills groups, and sometimes they didn't really want to be there. And part of that was because they felt like they were, by the time they're high school juniors and seniors, they were kind of done with group programming. And this is going to look different for different people, of course. But some of the people I was working with, they really felt like they had been in a lot of social skills programming and they were kind of done with that. And there's such variation in the strengths that different adolescents and young adults with autism are bringing to a group, that sometimes they felt that they couldn't identify with other members of the group, or they were coming in with hopes and expectations that they would connect with other people in the group, and then they didn't connect with other people in the group. And that really sort of sparked this idea of moving more to a one-on-one model to help with that sort of really individualization of the work that we were doing. So I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of different topics that and challenges that we could try to tackle.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashleigh. I'm just going to look to the virtual room one more time. Nope. So we've got another question from in person here. Shane, go ahead.
Hi, Ashleigh. Thank you for that. I think the work is fantastic that you're doing. I'm somewhat biased. The organization I work for, City Family Foundation, has programs that have a lot of commonalities with what you're doing. I'd like to actually ask you a little bit more about the Life Map program, in particular, the screening in of participants. I'm curious if you can speak at all to, so I guess 2 questions. First, screening in of participants. Who are the participants, or the qualities or features, characteristics of those participants who are the best kind of fit, I guess, for the program that you're offering? And then part 2 would be, you listed a lot of things that you think are maybe the success makers of your program, whether it be individual characteristics or coaching characteristics. I'm wondering if there's any things that, like if you did a bit of a component analysis to understand, like, are there certain what are those sort of magical features of the program that you think really do contribute to best outcomes, those things that really are the most important components that contribute to success?
Thank you for your question. Oh, I'm so sorry. 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 So thank you for your question. And in terms of how we are screening clients into the program, that it looks, every client is very different. So it looks different for every client. One of the things that we're really looking for is that they're able to articulate their goals in their own words, or at least begin that process. So some of the, especially for the younger adults who are coming into the LifeMap program, some of them, similarly with our Horizons program, are being enrolled in the program really because their parents are pushing them to do it. So if the client really isn't ready, and it's really a subjective judgment on the part of the program director, or if it's not the program, whoever is doing the intake with that particular client, it's really just a judgment call on, is this individual really ready for coaching? Are they at a place where they have some goals in mind, even if they're very broad, and are able, at least to some extent, to be able to articulate those goals? So I would say that's the key, but it really is just experience. And the LifeMap staff, they've been doing this for a number of years now, so I just think we're really lucky to have some really good staff in place who know what to look for and can sort of read the clients and be able to see whether this is going to be a good fit for them or not. So I'm not sure how helpful that answer is. In terms of the magical features, again, it's so individualized. I think maybe that is the magical feature, just that I think part of it also is the experience of the coaches. So they're very selective in who they hire as coaches. And these really are people with a lot of experience in the field and a lot of, they're bringing a lot of skills to that coaching relationship. And I think that is really key, because it seems like if I know how to find a job, I can help someone else find a job, but that's not the case at all. It's a very specialized skill set in helping an autistic adult to really formulate goals in their own words and formulate feasible goals. So the skills and experience of the coaches, I think, is really key to the success of the LifeMap program. Then I would also say the coaches' willingness, and as they reported themselves in the questionnaire, their willingness to really listen to the client and what they want, and enable the client to really have ownership over the work that they're doing with their coach, and to really feel empowered to work towards their own goals. I think that's really critical. So just that, everything is from the client's perspective. And if that's not the case, the motivation won't be there for the client to work towards those goals. And that can actually make things worse in terms of increasing feelings of anxiety and, lack of self-esteem when the client sees they're not reaching the goals. And it's really because they were never actually that invested in those goals in the first place, or the goal is not worded in their own words in a way that they can really relate to that goal. So I think I would identify those two as the key ingredients. Oh, rapport with mentor, as Dean, I see that in the chat box. Yes, building that rapport, that trust. I think that kind of ties in as well, because if the client sees that their coach is really listening to them and incorporating their own perspective and ideas into formulating those goals, that helps to build that trust and then helps to build that rapport. So that is key.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashleigh, for your great keynote, and to Sean for that introduction. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I don't want to jinx it, but we are running on time, which is a stark contrast to this morning, which means I can tell all the jokes that I wanted to tell this afternoon. Also, yesterday, my president was in the audience, so I had to be careful about the number of jokes.